Ukraine war escalation concerns. Amidst Putin's optimism, Western arms supplies continue. Amidst the recent escalation of conflict between Russia and Ukraine, Russian President Vladimir Putin is reportedly optimistic about peace negotiations and believes he holds the upper hand in the war, according to Bloomberg. Despite this, former U.S. President Donald Trump continues his efforts to urge both sides to end the war and facilitate a conflict resolution. Peace negotiations and diplomatic efforts. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has emphasized his nation's readiness for peace, urging pressure on Russia to end the conflict. He announced the formation of an expanded national negotiation group for dialogue with Russia, stating, "We are also ready for a leadership-level meeting to resolve key issues. Ukraine is not afraid of direct talks with Russia." Additionally, Ukraine is considering an international meeting involving delegations from Russia, the US, the European Union, EU, and the United Kingdom, with potential venues in Turkey, the Vatican, or Switzerland. The Kremlin has confirmed its openness to direct talks between President Putin and Zelensky, provided that current peace efforts achieve tangible progress and agreements. U.S. President Donald Trump, following a 2-hour phone call with Putin, announced on Twitter that Russia and Ukraine would immediately begin negotiations towards a ceasefire and, more importantly, ending the war. Trump described the call as great and very good, emphasizing a focus on ending the bloodshed and resolving the conflict for potential trade benefits. Putin reportedly viewed his call with Trump as rich in content, frank, and very useful, and thanked the U.S. for its involvement in resuming direct talks. Discussions have centered on a memorandum for a future peace agreement, outlining principles, timelines, and the possibility of a temporary ceasefire. Contacts from the Istanbul talks have resumed, indicating progress. However, Ukraine's president's office disclosed that during May 16th talks in Turkey, Russia demanded Ukraine withdraw from the Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions, a demand Zelensky firmly rejected as a red line. He questioned Russia's sincerity in seeking an end to the conflict. Trump also communicated his negotiation plans to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and European leaders from France, Italy, Germany, and Finland. The Vatican has expressed willingness to host talks. Reports indicated Trump's fatigue and anger over slow progress in conflict resolution efforts. Prior to his call with Putin, Trump stated the call's topic would be to end the bloodshed that is killing on average over 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week, and to discuss trade. The UK Prime Minister's office confirmed that EU allies had urged Trump to increase pressure on Russia before his call with Putin. Discussions included the enormous cost of the war and the necessity for an unconditional ceasefire, with calls for sanctions if Russia failed to comply. Experts note a difference in negotiation strategies. Russia favors a bottom-up approach, where lower-level specialists handle technical details before high-level decisions, while the U.S. prefers a top-down approach, with leaders agreeing on a broad framework first. Putin notably did not attend the Istanbul talks at a high level, sending a lower-level delegation instead. Putin maintains that Russia's core objective is to achieve lasting peace by eliminating the root causes of the crisis and ensuring Russia's security. He stated Russia has sufficient forces to achieve its goals. Direct talks between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul on May 16th marked the first such meeting in over 3 years. The head of the Russian delegation, Vladimir Medinsky, expressed satisfaction with the results and readiness for continued contact, noting an agreement to exchange prisoners 1,000 for 1,000. Ukraine also requested direct talks between the heads of state, a request Russia is considering. Military developments and capabilities. Military analyst Brandon Trey Richard suggests Russia is adjusting its armed forces to new challenges, noting an increase in the lethality of Russian weapon systems, despite Moscow's assertions of no intent to attack NATO countries. The presence of Iskander 1000 tactical ballistic missiles capable of high-speed maneuvering in their final phase makes them difficult for enemy missile defense systems to counter. Richard highlighted that these systems are very impressive and that NATO countries must swiftly implement countermeasures. He also stated that these missiles with a range of 1,000 kilometers are designed to bypass NATO defenses and offer nuclear strike capabilities, rarely missing their targets. Regarding Abrams tanks, Australia announced it would transfer 49 M1A1 Abrams tanks to Ukraine, pending U.S. approval. However, U.S. and Australian officials have expressed concerns about logistical challenges, maintenance difficulties, and the tank's vulnerability to Russian unmanned aerial vehicles. So the top of the Abrams tank is considered its weakest point, especially in drone warfare. Reports indicate these heavy tanks have faced challenges, including UAV attacks and rough terrain, with at least 9 Abrams lost. In combat, 10 abandoned and 1 captured by Russia, which was displayed at a military exhibition in Moscow. Moscow has repeatedly condemned Western arms shipments, warning they only prolong the conflict. On the topic of missile tests, Ukraine's defense report indicates Russia plans to conduct training launches of its RS-24 Yars intercontinental ballistic missile ICBM. These launches, using a training warhead, are intended to threaten Ukraine and exert pressure on EU and NATO member states, a tactic referred to as nuclear blackmail. The launches are ordered from a mobile ground system of Russia's strategic missile forces near Suvorovo-Sverdlovsk Oblast. The 3-stage solid propellant missile has a range exceeding 10,000 kilometers. The U.S. Embassy in Ukraine had previously warned U.S. citizens of a potential large-scale air attack risk. Russia also announced it would close airspace over the Kapustin Yar missile test site for 2 days in May for ballistic missile launches. Sanctions and economic pressure. Poland's National Tax Administration recently seized 5 tons of Boeing civilian aircraft tires at the Korostin border crossing near Belarus. The shipment, declared as car and bus tires, was found to be misdeclared Boeing aircraft tires intended for Azerbaijan but routed through Belarus and Russia, raising suspicions of sanctions evasion. The item is on the EU's list of prohibited goods against Russia since the 2022 invasion. Since Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022, the EU, US, and allies have imposed unprecedented sanctions, including restrictions on high-tech equipment, aerospace components, dual-use goods, and asset freezes on Russian entities, aiming to limit Russia's war-sustaining capabilities. The EU has expressed readiness for additional sanctions to further weaken Russia's economy, particularly targeting fossil fuel exports, which are Russia's main revenue source. While the EU has already banned Russian coal imports and imposed a price cap on oil, it continues its strategy to reduce reliance on Russian natural gas, acknowledging this may lead to higher energy prices elsewhere. Poland's finance minister echoed the sentiment on Russia's dependence on oil and gas exports and reiterated